And NZI take 1.
Oh, you couldn't think of the name neutral zone infraction.
Yes.
Neutral zone infraction.
Do not ask me to spell it. Randy,
I
what
can
is...
spell zone.
Yeah, I can't spell neutral or infraction.
I can spell neutral.
Randy, you tell us the topic of the day, please.
Okay, the topic of the day is our top 5 each mediocre quarterbacks. Our list. Nobody else's. We don't care about your list. We care about our list.
And actually, it's not top 5 each. One of us has 4, one of us has 5, because we don't believe in a top 10. We believe in a top 9 or 11, and we got tired of thinking. So, we're doing top 9, right?
Top 9. This is true.
Rock, paper,
we can't be bothered to do that one. Probably just rock, paper, scissors.
Rock, paper, scissors to see who gets 5.
Okay.
Rock, paper, scissors. I don't even know. Are you serious?
Yes!
Here, you do it.
Okay. It's like rock, paper, scissors. Ah, paper. I lost. You get 5, I get 4.
It's just as well, mine.
Yeah, well, my number 5 I wasn't that passionate about anyway.
Okay, so these are the
top 9. 5 for him, 4 for me. My 5 would have been better. But
that's no doubt.
Mediocre quarterback.
Mediocre.
Of all time. Ours. These are who we believe.
The criteria is simple. What is the criteria?
The criteria is we just thought you were mediocre. We didn't think you were a great quarterback. We just thought, you weren't Manning, you weren't Brady, you weren't Marino, you weren't Elway. You were just a... We think you're mediocre. I wouldn't want you on my team.
It's very clever how you worded that. I noticed that, by the way.
What did you notice?
Yeah. So anyway, well, I will go first. Only because...
Well, because you got the extra one.
Yes, I did. And
I'm going to cringe at some of yours, I think.
You are. And I'm going to stick Joe Theismann on my list. Now, just saying, he had number 44, John Riggins, in front of him. An offensive line, which a fat guy like me could run behind.
The Hogs.
The Hogs.
You know it's a great offensive line when they've got a nickname.
The Hogs.
The Hogs.
And what's funny to me is the Redskins already had a great nickname, the Redskins, but they called them the Hogs.
They called them the Hogs.
So that would be my number 5 mediocre quarterback. And you know what? He got killed in one Super Bowl. He did win a Super Bowl. And as you can tell, I don't care if you were in the Super Bowl for my list. I just thought he was mediocre. Although, not a terrible announcer, he's mediocre.
He's mediocre as an announcer, too.
Yeah,
I could have done without Joe Theismann as an announcer.
Great hair.
Great hair.
Mike would like
that. I'm telling you right now, he has great hair. Mike would have enjoyed the hair.
So anyway, that was and I have nothing else to add about that. I just threw him on there.
He broke his leg. He had the great injury.
He had the great
injury, but that was thanks to Morris.
And that was. Otherwise, if Joe had done the injury, it would have been mediocre.
That's right.
Just saying. So, Randy, if I may, I would love to hear, since I have not heard, what was yours?
Okay, we're not doing, of course, my number 1. We're starting off with my number 4. Jim Everett. And the reason I go Jim Everett, I don't really have a reason. He's mediocre. He was boring. And his biggest claim to fame.
I was going to say.
His biggest claim to fame, Jim Rome making him angry for calling him Chris Everett. He was a baby. He couldn't handle an announcer calling him Chris.
You know what? I'm going to play. I'm going to take the other side of this. No, I do think he's mediocre. I am not taking that side. But I'm going to say this. Everett asked him nicely. Came on the show, and Rome pisses me off about this.
See, you don't like Rome, so
no,
we had a top 10.
Well, Rome is on my top 10 people I hate.
Yeah,
no, but I like Rome. I think he's actually a good announcer, but he acts tougher than he is. I mean, he's always acting like this tough guy, and he was trying to poke the bear, and Everett asked him not to do it. And even came on the show, and Jim had to act tough.
But here's the thing. Would Rome have poked the bear with a great quarterback? No. No, he wouldn't have. He had a mediocre quarterback in front of him with mediocre stats.
Yes.
And he says, I could poke the mediocre bear.
I can.
I could poke the mediocre bear because I'm not going after Elway. I'm not talking to Dan Marino. I'm talking to Jim Everett. The most popular guy on his team is the running back, Eric Dickerson.
Yeah. when he was with the Rams. We got to point that out. You are right about that, and I will say this about Jim Effort.
He poked a mediocre bear. That's
And you
what
know
he was
what?
doing.
He threw a mediocre push.
Yeah.
It was not a really.
And he was, yeah,
it was a push.
It was it's like here's this giant football player and he barely can move Jim Rome, who's like 5'5" and weighs 140 pounds.
And I like Rome. He is fun, but I do think he's a little. He acts just way too. You know what?
I know, but he would have never poked. He never would have poked a great bear. He just poked a mediocre bear.
He wouldn't have said it about. Who's another one? Well, I'm sure there's another name out there. Elvis Peacock? No, maybe not.
I don't know. Well,
I was trying to think of a really. No offense.
Elvis Peacock was a lineman. I don't think he would have been on the show.
No, I was trying to think of somebody who had a funny name that Jim Rome would have poked but wouldn't have poked because he was just too big and mean.
Oh, yeah. Well, he obviously has no respect for mediocre quarterbacks, as this list shows we don't either.
We don't either. And my next one. You ready? Jim McMahon.
Jim McMahon.
Well, I get no argument.
He wore sunglasses really well.
You know what? He liked to poke the bear, as you like to say. Pete Rozelle.
Pete Rozelle.
He liked to wear.
Oh yeah, he did. He liked to wear the.
I want to tell you why I consider.
Well, I'll tell you, he had great publicity.
He did, and the reason
not a great quarterback.
No, I don't think he was a great quarterback. He handed off to Suey, and
Walter Payton.
Thank you. There you go. Yeah, that was rough. So through to Willie Gault. You know, I just don't think he was all that. He wasn't great. He's barely mediocre. Went to the Chargers, great place to live, I would think, and sucked there. So I'm just putting him on there.
Jim McMahon, also an injury. That remember when the Green Bay Packers guy Harris picked him up and slammed him on the ground after the play was over.
And if I may say, that was not a mediocre slam. That was
a good slam. So we've had Lawrence Taylor with the great injury on your Joe Theismann, your mediocre quarterback, and we had Harris with the great slam on your mediocre quarter. So is this kind of going to be the theme? Are we going to find the great injury for your mediocre quarterbacks?
Well, looking at my list.
But that was the last one, probably.
Yeah, it was.
We're done.
Not my last mediocre.
We're done with that part.
But I picked McMahon, and I think Ditka would stand by that. You go.
I think Ditka would stand by that. My next, Bobby Hebert. Because actually I believe Bobby Hebert was not that good of a quarterback, but I really liked Bobby Hebert, so I made him my third best mediocre quarterback. Because I liked the name Bobby Hebert, and I did. I like Bobby Hebert. I rooted for him. I used to play on my video games with him.
You played as Bobby Hebert?
As Bobby Hebert, because I like Bobby Hebert. He had the Cajun accent. Only NFL player with that Cajun accent.
He did have it. And he was in...
I don't know why I like the accent. I think it's because I also like Justin Wilson. You remember that guy from Channel 6? He would do the cooking show, I guarantee.
You know, I'm going to say this. I don't.
You don't remember
I was going to pretend to...
I'm hoping somebody does. My God. Was this a reference that is like everybody's... Who's Justin Wilson?
I think he was a mediocre cook.
Yeah, you've gone too far. That was not a mediocre. He made some really good gumbo and jambalaya. And
well, you know, and Hebert would have appreciated
that. He always wore the suspenders.
Hebert, you know what? This is how mediocre he was. That city had nothing. That team sucked. And they were just happy to get to the playoffs. Playoffs? Wasn't that the same guy?
Yeah, well, it was the same guy. I think it was Jim Moore was the coach of that team at the time, too.
And it wasn't even that. There was only one good team in the whole damn division, and that was the 49ers. And they may have been slightly above mediocre. But, yes, Hebert is... I put him there too. He's not on my list though, but yeah. I got you.
But I actually don't really think he's that good of a quarterback. But I put him as a because I like Bobby Hebert.
I'm gonna throw this guy out there, Mark. Say the last.
Rippin.
Not
Ripken, because we're having this problem with him and Nicholson and Nicholas and Ripken.
You know what? Sometimes the names sound alike to me. I get it that Jack Nicholson
was an actor, and Jack Nicklaus was the golfer.
I did make that big faux pas. You won't see that.
You'll never see that show.
I deleted it. However, back to...
45 minutes.
Huh?
45 minutes.
Yeah, it was a long show.
It was a long show.
You know what, though? Nobody complained.
Nobody complained on a single viewer.
So, back to this guy.
Rippin?
Yeah, whatever.
Just call him Rippin.
The reason I put him on there is because I know he had a Super Bowl win, as some of my guys do. But again, he was playing behind and with a really good Washington Redskin team. Unless you're in other parts of the country, I think they're known as the Warriors.
Actually, right now they're being known as the Washington football team.
Really?
Yeah, people are not calling them the Redskins anymore. They're being called the Washington Pro Football Team. That's a long way to go with that. The Washington team. They're being called that too.
You know what? That's another topic for another show. And
we're not going to get into that.
We're not going to. And we may not even do that show.
We may not do that show. It's kind of serious.
It's way too serious. But I did take Ripien. God, he really should change that name. Only because I don't think he did a dang thing after that.
No,
he only won the Super Bowl. I get it. But you know what? They had a pretty good team.
But he didn't do anything before it. He didn't do anything after it. He had one magical season.
It was magic.
And that's a mediocre quarterback. One magic season.
And it wasn't even a long NFL career.
We didn't even have Don Majkowski in here, and he was called the Magic Man.
Yeah, and you know what? He was on my list at one point.
He was on my list, too, but he didn't play for enough seasons.
But you know what? I thought
Brett Favre took his job.
Yeah, and I think he was under mediocre. No,
I actually like Don Majkowski.
Well, you can like him.
I think he would have been one of the all-time mediocres.
I'm sure he's
if he could have played
somewhere.
He had something to strive for. All-time mediocre. Wow.
You know, and I think people have to understand.
I think people should want to be on our list.
I think you should understand, too, that as bad as these guys could have been, would have been, or some of them aren't or are, it depends on what you think, they still were better than us. At quarterback.
Better than you.
Well, yeah.
I would have been great.
You might.
No, I wouldn't have.
I
couldn't. It was that whole reading the defense.
I got to be honest, you're really good at what you do, but I can see you doing a lot of things mediocre.
You do a lot of things. You should see me at work. I do a lot of things.
Okay, well, I got that one. So that was my fourth one, I believe.
Yeah, that was. It's like now I'm up to...
no, that was my third. I apologize. That was my third. I can't count. We have nobody here to help me. You're up.
Where's our statistician? We don't get one of those. Okay, my number two, and I think everybody out there will agree on this one quarterback as being an all-time mediocre. I think even this guy would agree. If Trent Dilfer.
Bingo.
Trent Dilfer. This guy is the poster child. I know you want to say Sean Salisbury is the poster child for mediocre, but Trent Dilfer, high-round draft pick, did get a Super Bowl win, had a couple of nice games, but for the most part played behind a great defense that won him all those games. All he had to do was not make mistakes.
The only thing I have to add to that is this. My next pick, Ron Jaworski. You know why?
Oh, wow, you did go with the Jaworski.
You know why I moved on from yours? Because I totally agree. And I don't need to be a yes man to you.
Thank you. I'm glad that you're not going to be a yes man to agree with my Trent Dilfer.
Unless you want me to, then I will.
No, you don't have to.
Okay, Tebow would be.
Tim Tebow might be on that list.
Although yours could be too.
Yeah, mine could be too.
Now I am wearing a Tim Tebow jersey, which you can see I cut the sleeves.
I thought you wanted to call it Brandon Marshall.
Oh, damn it, I did. So anyway, I actually like Tim Tebow. I think he has all the upside if he could just find it. And, it's hard for me to say he wasn't mediocre when he threw the ball in the dirt and nobody was after him. Randy does disagree. He thinks he's worse than mediocre. But
I think he might be the worst quarterback I've ever watched play from a quarterbacking standpoint.
I put words in your mouth.
But
I apologize.
I still like the guy.
I
rooted for him.
But he's on my list.
He's a Bronco.
He's on my list, and if you don't like it, you can call in. Phone's right here.
But the number's not?
No, I don't do that. We're working on a phone line, but that's...
You know what? We need to have one of the old rotary phones if we do that.
I had it, and I thought it'd make a great prop. I thought I was going to hook it up everything. Don't get me wrong. But anyway.
There would have been a cord coming out of it and everything, so you would have thought it was
as soon as AT&T or whoever.
Yeah, we're going to put a little thing on the back that makes it ring, Ding. Actually, our phones make the old-time ringing noise. We could just have them make that noise.
Well, we do need to do that phone. I'll talk to you at after the show. I got an idea for that. Randy has the next pick. What am I? Oh, jeez.
Yeah, this is the draft. No.
Here it comes.
Number one all-time mediocre quarterback. Thank you. Joe Montana.
Whoa!
Joe, I know he's got 4 Super Bowl ring, Montana. I don't care. Joe Montana, overrated, every sense of the word. Joe Montana was given the best football player of all time in Jerry Rice.
The GOAT.
John Taylor, Roger Craig, Tom Rappin, one of the best offensive lines, great defense. The man was handed Super Bowl rings on a platter. And here's the other thing. Why do you always have to come from behind? In my opinion, great quarterbacks shouldn't have to come from behind. They should always be ahead.
Except John Elway.
Except for John Elway, because his teams were terrible. Joe Montana doesn't have that luxury. He had great teams.
Great teams.
Great teams.
Doesn't even know what it's like.
And it's like, and I'll tell you this right now, Joe Montana's going to be on another one of our lists, players I hate. So, so you're going to see this guy towards the top of that list too. But I'm sorry, overrated. And you would have put him on, if Joe Montana would have been a Bronco quarterback, we wouldn't have even had those first 3 Super Bowl losses.
Let's take it worse. Let's
second
take it
3.
Cincinnati, Cleveland.
Put him on the Detroit Lions. Never even been to a Super Bowl.
They still wouldn't.
They still wouldn't have been to a Super Bowl. They still would be getting high draft picks.
You know,
Joe Montana, overrated. If you don't like it, do your own show and tell me why I'm wrong.
Actually,
and you won't be able to convince me.
You know what? I have to correct you.
Steve Young, best Niners quarterback.
You said he was overrated.
He is overrated.
But that's another show. This is mediocre.
Okay, but he's mediocre.
He is.
That because people think he's great, and I think he's mediocre.
He is mediocre.
So he's overrated by those people.
I'm not going to argue. Well, I am a little bit.
I don't overrate Joe Montana. I have him right where he belongs. Mediocre.
He is the number one
mediocre. Oh, so he's great at being mediocre.
Yes, he is of the list of the best. And there were others that could have been on the list. We had several. Rodney Peete, and these guys didn't make it. Testaverde,
Scott Mitchell, Testaverde, Steve
Cordell Stewart, Joe Namath. I don't want to hear about that one. But anyway, there were lots of, and the rest of them, they just.
Russell Wilson.
When you think about it.
That's for Rolf.
And Rolf, if you do watch this show.
I don't think he'll ever will, but if he does, I think it'd be funny just to have Russell Wilson.
Top Asian players, you might watch that one.
But there hasn't been a lot.
Monte Seau, what's that guy's name?
Junior Seau?
Not Junior Seau. Teo, the guy that doesn't know the difference between girls and
Oh, yeah, Monte Teo.
That was close.
I don't even think his name's Monte. Wow, I cannot remember his name. He's been out of the spotlight for a while.
Yes, well, he'll date a guy again.
Yeah.
Or girl. We don't know.
We really look unprofessional at this point, not knowing what Teo's first name is.
I can delete that part.
Okay.
But we don't, because this is a live show, and we don't do that.
It's live.
It is live.
We're not professionals at this.
So basically, that was probably...
Manti-Teo.
Manti! What did I say?
Monty.
What's close?
Monte. Well, here's the guy. Manti-Teo. Now we've got it right.
Okay, wait, hold on.
Plays for the Chargers.
You know how I pronounce things. So I might
What about Dan Saliumua? No, he was more...
That's a hard name. I don't say. You're really good with names. We talked about this, and I'm not.
Mosi Tutupu.
That just
remember him?
You got to go to the bathroom.
No, Mosi Tutupu.
Yeah,
remember him?
That's a name I would.
Vai Sikahema.
That was a good name.
That's a great name. We should have that.
Great names.
Great names. Great names. Just players. Maybe they weren't great players. But
I apologize. That's the alarm going off saying, "Hey, your show
is
is
like we've
over."
been on too long already. Wow, that went fast.
It did. Well, I hear that a lot. So I'll tell you what. Neutral zone infraction. You can see it again. Anything to add?
Nothing to add.
My name is
Joe Montana wins. Mediocre quarterbacks.
My name is Blue. His name is
Randy. I'm not going by last name.
He doesn't go by his last name
because I don't want people to find me with the Montana thing. I really don't.
I don't think you.
I don't think anybody's going to look for me because all the Montana backers are.
You know what? If you don't like Randy's pick, what can they do?
They can do their own show.
There you go.
Do your own show and tell me why. And I'm not going to watch it.
No,
I'm really not.
And you know what? You're probably just going to pick Elway because you heard us say Elway.
You're going to pick Elway or Peyton Manning because you're hurt.
And that just makes you a hater. And you know what? We don't need haters.
Don't hate them if you don't really hate them.
Yeah.
I really hate him.
He really does. I mean, I even asked. You just hate him as a football player, and Randy said...
No, I just hate him.
You just hate him. So
he was a boring interview, too. He's a boring in his commercials. God, I just really do not like Joe Montana.
I think most sports interviews...
We probably shouldn't be saying hate so much. Hate's not a nice word. But I hate Joe Montana. Hate him. This is going to be on another list. Hate him.
Until we come up with
we're rambling and going over.
Yeah, we're gonna go down. I'm going to stand up, and I'm going to turn off the camera. And